She didn't even play. No warm-up, no highlight reel, no buzzer beaters. And still, she took the city. Thousands showed up not for a game, but for a chance. A chance to maybe see her, maybe get close, maybe leave with an autograph that feels like gold. And when Caitlin Clark finally appeared, limping slightly but smiling wide, it wasn't a press event. It was Beatlemania. Cameras flashed, kids screamed, grown men stood frozen like statues. The United Center, the home of Chicago Sky, became a shrine to a player who didn't wear their jersey, didn't take the court, and didn't owe them a second. But she gave them 20 minutes, 2/3 of the arena, hundreds of signatures, pictures, waves, energy. You could almost feel the tension crackle through the building. This wasn't her turf, not on paper, but everyone acted like it was. Fever jerseys flooded the stands. Fans with posters, phones, merch, chanting, hoping, and all for a player who wasn't even on the roster that night. Meanwhile, Chicago's supposed face of the franchise? Nowhere. Another injury, another silent vanishing act. While Clark turned the arena into her playground, Angel Reese was busy dropping cryptic social posts from a quiet corner of the city. The contrast couldn't be louder. The crowd didn't seem confused about who mattered, and when the game tipped off, there was a strange silence. Not because Caitlin wasn't playing, but because everyone had already gotten what they came for. This wasn't a game, it was a takeover. A few months back, Angel Reese posted a Reebok campaign that said, "Come to your trap, take over your trap." Cute, marketable. But this weekend, that slogan got hijacked, rewritten, burned to the ground, because Caitlin Clark did come to the trap, and she took it over with no drama, no mic, and no warm-up jersey. She flipped the lights on, turned the cameras toward herself, and made the spotlight look effortless. While Reese's seat sat cold and empty, Clark lit up the sidewalk outside like it was a red carpet. Not with antics, but presence. That's the part nobody can manufacture. There were fans crying, kids shaking with excitement, and adults saying, "She's the one." And inside the arena, you'd think Clark was the home team. Jerseys, cheers, chants. You couldn't tell who the road team really was. This wasn't just embarrassing for Reese, it was poetic. The kind of moment where reality pulls back the curtain and says, here's who really runs the show. And let's be honest, if the roles were reversed and Angel had shown up while Caitlin sat out, no one's lining up around the block. No one's storming gates for selfies. No one's turning the city into a movement. That's the difference. That's the gap. You don't earn that with tweets or branding. You earn it with greatness. So, if you're wondering what take over your trap really looks like, just rewind the tape. Caitlin Clark already wrote the blueprint. And here's where it gets even more unreal. Caitlin Clark didn't play, but her team made the most noise on the court. Indiana Fever walked into enemy territory without their superstar and still looked like the main event. From the jump, they were locked in, fast, focused, and fiery. Chicago looked like they were waiting for the game to come to them. It never did. Kelsey Mitchell was a flamethrower. She came out hitting threes like she had something to prove. 7 makes from deep. 35 points, every shot sharper than the last. By the time Chicago figured out she was on one, it was already too late. And she wasn't alone. Aaliyah Boston was all over the glass, punishing the Sky's bigs. Ari McDonald came off the bench like she was born for that moment. Timpson and Hull added key minutes that kept Indiana's foot on the gas. What made this even more brutal? They didn't just win, they dominated, controlled pace, killed momentum. Every time Chicago tried to claw back, Indiana shut the door with authority. This wasn't a lucky break. It was a statement. Fever didn't flinch without Clark. They thrived. And if that doesn't scare the rest of the league, it should. Because now, Indiana doesn't just have Caitlin Clark, they've got a squad. They weren't supposed to look this good without her. But Indiana didn't just show up, they showed out. From the first whistle, there was something different in their energy. Crisp passes, relentless defense, confidence that didn't waver for a second. This wasn't about proving they could survive without Caitlin Clark. This was about proving they could thrive. The pace was theirs. The ball movement was surgical. Chicago tried to respond, but they were always a step behind. Every time they closed the gap, Indiana answered with a run of their own. It wasn't just skill, it was control. The Fever looked like a team that knew exactly what they wanted and how to get it. What's wild is that the Fever didn't have to lean on one star. The whole roster contributed. It was balanced, sharp, efficient. They didn't rely on hero ball. They relied on each other. That's what separates playoff threats from pretenders. And Chicago? They looked stunned. At home, in front of their fans. The pressure was on and they crumbled. Defensive breakdowns, stale offense. You could see the frustration building with every possession. It was a masterclass in what happens when one team is prepared and the other is pretending. What Clark's absence did was expose the truth. Indiana isn't a one-player phenomenon. They're building something bigger. A culture, a standard, a team that plays with purpose, regardless of who's in uniform. And that's dangerous. Because when your system works without your star, that's when the rest of the league should start watching their back. If you thought the Fever were just a hype machine, this game erased that. What they did in Chicago wasn't just a win, it was a warning. Let's talk about Kelsey Mitchell, because what she did in this game wasn't just impressive, it was commanding. From the first possession, she was on a mission. Quick trigger, smooth handle, no hesitation. You could feel it immediately. This was her night. 7 threes, 35 points, pure heat, and none of it felt forced. Every bucket was in rhythm within the offense, like she was painting a masterpiece one possession at a time. When she pulled up, you held your breath. When the ball hit the net, you weren't surprised. And it wasn't just the scoring, it was the poise, the swagger, the way she led the team when it mattered most. With Clark out, she took the wheel and floored it. Chicago couldn't keep up. They tried trapping her, they tried switching, nothing worked. Mitchell played chess while the Sky played checkers. She didn't just light it up, she made it look easy. Snake-like off the dribble, crafty at the rim, confident beyond the arc. The Sky defenders looked helpless. The crowd, even the ones rooting for Chicago, had to respect it. This wasn't just a hot hand. This was a performance that reminded the world that Kelsey Mitchell is not a role player. She's a star in her own right. And in the absence of Clark, she seized the spotlight and made it hers. When your second option drops 35 and controls the game like that, you're not a one-woman team. You're a problem. And Kelsey Mitchell just proved it to everyone. There's a certain kind of dominance that doesn't shout. It just shows up, gets the job done, and walks off like it never broke a sweat. That was Aaliyah Boston in Chicago. No theatrics, no flash. Just pure basketball IQ and physical control. Her 14 points and 11 rebounds might not make every headline, but ask anyone who watched, she owned the paint. Every time Chicago tried to feed their bigs, Boston was there, 2 steps ahead. Denying entry passes, altering shots, outmuscling opponents for rebounds. She made elite players look average, and what's wild is how quiet it was. She wasn't chasing highlight blocks or flexing after boards, she just played smart, tough basketball. It wasn't just defense either. On offense, her screens freed up shooters. Her post positioning opened passing lanes. Her chemistry with guards like Mitchell and Timpson made the offense hum. She didn't need to score 25 to control the game. She was the anchor, the stabilizer, the reason Indiana never looked rattled. And when she got doubled, no panic, just quick kicks to the perimeter or smart resets. That's the kind of presence you build around. That's leadership without words. Aaliyah Boston isn't chasing clout. She's building wins. And in a game where the spotlight could have felt empty without Clark, she helped make sure it wasn't. So, if you're still wondering whether Indiana has enough firepower behind Clark, just remember this. Boston doesn't need the spotlight to dominate. She just needs a basketball and a little space to go to work. By halftime, it was clear something was off. Not with Indiana, with Chicago. They weren't just playing badly. They looked lost. Body language sagged, heads dropped. It didn't feel like a team fighting for playoff position. It felt like a group trying not to break. This was supposed to be their bounce-back moment, their chance to reclaim pride on home turf. But instead, the Sky looked like a team stuck in quicksand. They couldn't move the ball. Their defense broke down constantly. And worst of all, no one stepped up. Turnovers piled up, possessions ended in wild heaves or forced drives. Their rotations were late. Their help defense? Non-existent. They looked like they hadn't practiced in weeks. And every time they tried to rally, Indiana slammed the door shut, again and again. The final score said 93-78. But let's be real. It felt like a 30-point beatdown. Indiana shot nearly 50% from deep. Chicago? Just over 30%. That kind of gap doesn't happen by accident. It's preparation, focus, belief. And as Indiana's confidence grew, Chicago's disappeared. there was no sense of urgency, no spark, just frustration, confusion, and silence from a team that looked like it didn't have answers. This wasn't just another loss, it was a gut punch, a reality check, a reminder that hype and potential mean nothing without execution. Indiana came into this game with something to prove. Chicago came in hoping to survive. One team left stronger, the other left exposed. Depth wins championships, and Indiana made that crystal clear. This wasn't just about star power or flashy stats. It was about the players who come in, do their job, and keep the engine running without missing a beat. Michaela Timpson, Lexi Hull, Ari McDonald. These aren't household names yet, but they played like it. Timpson was everywhere. Steals, deflections, transition buckets. She didn't just fill minutes, she shifted momentum. Her presence on the floor disrupted everything Chicago tried to run. She got into passing lanes, finished at the rim, and forced the Sky to call timeout more than once. Lexi Hull brought energy and discipline. No wasted motion, just strong defense, smart cuts, and hustle that never let up. The kind of performance that won't show up on highlight reels, but absolutely changes outcomes. And Ari McDonald, she gave Indiana exactly what they needed. Points off the bench, relentless pressure on the perimeter, and that spark every team needs when starters rest. This kind of production from role players isn't a luxury. It's the difference between winning games and building a winning culture. These aren't just backups, they're impact players. And Indiana's system lets them shine. Chicago's bench, by comparison, looked flat, outmatched, like they were just there to rest the starters. Indiana's bench came to compete. And they delivered. So when people say the Fever are just Clark and friends, show them this game, show them the film. Because when your second unit plays with this kind of fire, your ceiling gets a whole lot higher. And when your whole roster believes in the mission, that's when things get dangerous. This wasn't a rivalry, it was a mirage, a carefully crafted narrative pushed by media, fans, and maybe even some players who wanted to believe they were equals. But the events in Chicago ended all that. Caitlin Clark wasn't even on the court. And still, she stole the show. Meanwhile, Angel Reese was nowhere to be found. Again, another injury. Another moment ducked. And the timing, almost too convenient. There's been buzz online. Speculation that Reese's absence was strategic. That maybe the moment felt too big. That facing Indiana in her city, with all eyes watching, was a risk she didn't want to take. Reports claim it's a back issue, but fans aren't buying it. And after this performance from the Fever, you can't blame them. Because while Caitlin signed autographs, sparked fan frenzies, and elevated everyone around her, even from the bench, Reese was invisible, silent. You don't build a legacy on Instagram stories and sponsorships. You build it by showing up, and right now, one of them is showing up every chance she gets. The other is crafting captions from the sidelines. It's not hate, it's just reality. One player commands cities, the other's still trying to prove she belongs in the conversation. And this game, it wasn't just a turning point, it was a reveal. A look behind the curtain that showed exactly who's built for this spotlight and who's still chasing it. The rivalry didn't die in Chicago. It was never real to begin with. You want to know what separates good teams from great ones? Systems, culture, identity, and Indiana's got all three. They don't just react to the game, they dictate it. Push pace when they want, slow it down when needed, adjust on the fly. Their coaching is sharp, their execution is crisp, and every player knows their role. That's not luck, that's work. Contrast that with Chicago. From the jump, they looked out of sync, missed rotations, miscommunication, isolation plays that led to nowhere. It wasn't just a talent gap, it was a preparation gap. The stats told the story loud and clear. Indiana had 24 assists on 34 made shots. Chicago, just 16. That's not just passing, that's chemistry, that's movement, that's trust, turnovers. Chicago coughed it up again and again. Indiana stayed poised, sharp, and disciplined. That's mindset, that's coaching, that's championship DNA. And the rebounds? 42-35 in favor of the Fever. Not because of height, because of hustle, because of heart. This is what happens when a team plays connected, when every piece moves with purpose, and when the star player is out but the system stays intact. That's when you know something special is being built. The Fever don't just have momentum, they have a blueprint, and they just tested it in one of the loudest, most hostile environments they'll see this season, and walked out with the win. Not just a win on the scoreboard, a win in every way that matters. This is bigger than one game. This is a shift in how the entire league sees Indiana. For years, the Fever were an afterthought, bottom of the standings, no real threat. But now, they're one of the most complete teams in the W. And not just because of Caitlin Clark. That win in Chicago was proof. Proof that they're deeper, tougher, and more focused than people thought. It's not just Mitchell dropping 35. It's the way the team moves together, the way Boston anchors both ends, the way the bench shows up ready every night. What's dangerous about this team isn't just their skill, it's their belief. They've bought in. The front office gave them tools, the coaching staff gave them structure, and the players are turning that into results. When Clark comes back, defenses won't be able to load up on her. They'll have to pick their poison. Collapse on Caitlin, and Mitchell will torch you. Focus on Boston, and the shooters go off. Ignore the bench, and they'll spark a run. That's a nightmare for opponents, because Indiana isn't just playing well, they're evolving. They're learning how to win in different ways. Fast games, physical games, slow grinders, they've got answers. And while other teams scramble to patch holes, the Fever are stacking bricks. Foundation, chemistry, depth. That's how dynasties start. So if you thought Indiana's rise was just a Clark-driven trend, you're not watching close enough. Because what they did in Chicago, without her, should scare everyone. Caitlin Clark didn't touch the floor, but she owned the building. Angel Reese wasn't even in the shot. And Indiana, they stole the whole damn show. She didn't just come to the trap, she took it. And the Fever, they're just getting started. If you're finally seeing the difference between the hype and the truth, drop a comment. I've got the Fever. Like, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next chapter, it's going to be even louder.